Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziol.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Today, joining me from True Body Intelligence is Christopher Maher. I'm really excited to have him on the show. He's a very awesome past and history, and he's doing some great things today. So welcome to the show, Christopher.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So let's just start really quickly. I know I want to hear all about all the things that you do, but I also want to thank you for your service right first and foremost. I know that you were a Navy SEAL, and that is not easy at all. And we don't thank people enough like yourself for all you've done to keep the world free, to keep our country free, and me be able to do this podcast, right?
Oh, thank you. I mean, I was a very young man then, so it was decades ago. And yet, when you're younger, you're ignorant, meaning that you don't know the cost of things, right? And when you heap that much tension and stress into your body year after year after year, and then that becomes your winning strategy for life, then there comes a point where you have to pay the piper, right? Because you're going to end up with some symptomology that's going to get you to question those choices that you made when you were younger, and start to reevaluate what it is you want to do with your life, and who you want to become, and how you want to impact the world around you.
Right. And I know that through some experiences that I've had, working with like professional athletes and working with people that have, made it a career to kind of utilize their youth and their strength. They don't always have that secondary plan. They don't always think about like what's next. And then, when it is next, when that first career is sort of over, there's a struggle. So I know I feel like that's part of like what went on with you, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about you and about True Body Intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, True Body Intelligence and myself are, let's say, True Body Intelligence is an extension of my journey, right? And it's all the things that I've been through, all the things that I've struggled with, and I've been able to take all of my failures and all of my losses and turn them into something really positive, so that people who wake up and go, hey, there's something wrong here, and I need something that's going to answer the call, that's going to do what it says and says what it does, and it's simple to implement, then hopefully they find me. And so True Body Intelligence is like my child in a certain way. And then I use that in order to create positive impact around the world.
And how do you do that? What can you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
What that means is every human, every listener on the call today has tension in their body. But that tension in their body is the result of unresolved stress. And stress could be financial stress, right? Could be generational stress, could be familial stress, could be chemical stress, depending on where you live in the world. It could be professional stress. And so these stressors, as they go unresolved, they generate massive amounts of tension in the body. And then the tension starts to create small amounts of distortion at a structural level, at a physiological level, at a sense organ level. And you start to lose function. And what I mean, you start to lose eyesight, you start to lose hearing, you start to lose sleep. And your body starts to get more stiff. It starts to get more heavy. It starts to get more restricted. And at one point, you end up with some symptom that you can't resolve with going to Whole Foods or some natural food store and taking some supplements, or going to see your naturopath, because the depth of the stress is so deep that the systems that you're using, they lack the positional leverage that you need in order to create resolution. And so then what people do is they lean on what I call either negative stress management tools, which will be nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, pharmaceutical drugs, recreational drugs, food colorings, preservatives, anything that they can get a hold of to numb themselves out, right? Because they don't really want to feel the level of disconnection that they have from their body or from their life or from their professional career, right? And you and I both know tons of people who go to work every day and they're punching a time card, right? They're doing something that they're really not so passionate about. And there's a cost for all those kinds of things. Well, as you start to add that up over time, you start getting to your 30s or your 40s or your 50s and your 60s, and eventually you wake up and you realize you need help, right? And so when people come to see me, I have to educate them. It's the first thing, right? Most people have no idea where their pancreas is. Like, oh, can you show where your pancreas is? They're like, my pancreas. Or, they know where their heart is, right? But they're missing these other bits of information and knowledge that they should have. And so first they're going to get the education. And once I give them the education, I have to start teaching them how to remove this tension and this stress and this distortion out of their body, their brain, and their nervous system. And as that happens, they start to feel more free. They start to feel more present. They start to sleep better. They start to move better. And what could be more important in my mind than having a quiet mind, abundant amounts of energy, grounded emotions, and a fearless spirit? And then guess what happens? Now you start taking risk again. And as you start to take risk, your life starts to open up and you start to feel joy and happiness and presence, and you start to slip out of depression. So whenever you look at anybody in the world who's depressed or disconnected or feeling hopeless, look no further than what's going on in their body. And I guarantee you they have a massive amount of unresolved tension, stress, and distortion. And everybody, it's coming from different places, but it produces the same exact result, which is it disconnects people from their life. It makes them feel the opposite to happy, they feel unhappy. Instead of feeling joyful, they feel angry. Instead of feeling excited, they feel anxious. Instead of feeling confident, they feel fearful. Instead of feeling dutiful, they feel self-righteous. And so how do we shift someone out of those low functioning states of expression into high functioning states of manifestation? And so I've created systems that allow that to happen instantaneously and pretty much permanently.
Sounds very, very cool. So is this like kind of like a mind, body, and soul kind of thing, or more focused
Uh,
on the mind?
I mean, the mind is one aspect because it lives inside the body. My background in study and research has been into the impacts of traditional Chinese medicine. And Chinese medicine, they came up with this idea of called tendomuscular channels. And with these channels of tissue that move through your body, as you open those tissues up, it starts to pull out stress and tension out of your sense organs, your systemic organs, and all your structural tissues, and then out of reduces the stress on your vascular system and your nervous system. And anytime that you impact the body, you're impacting the emotions. Anytime you impact the emotions, you're impacting the spirit. Anytime you impact the spirit, you're impacting the mind, right? So what I would say is I produce systems to produce a more complete whole when we look at a human being. Like, let's get you physically intelligent. And as we get you more physically intelligent, you automatically become more emotionally intelligent. And as you increase your emotional intelligence, you become more spiritually intelligent. When I say spiritually intelligent, I mean ethical, moral, highly principled, and integrous. As we increase your spiritual intelligence, we're able to increase your analytical intelligence. And so the work is called True Body Intelligence for the purpose of creating highly intelligent human beings so that they can go into the world and do really good things.
And that's kind of like what the show is all about, is trying to help people go out into the world and do really good things. So, whether it's, volunteering, whether it's creating your own nonprofit or something like this. So how would I mean, I guess, where would you start, right? Where would you start with a person coming in and needing this kind of help?
Well, first I start with almost a 2 to 2.5 hour to 3 hour investigation, right? Because
Mhm,
when people show up, they have an idea of what got them in the door, which is what I call the hook,
mhm,
right? The hook got them in the door. The hook isn't what will keep them in the door. We have to figure out why they have that symptom in the first place. And so the challenge with allopathic medicine, meaning Western medicine,
mhm,
versus traditional medicine, the challenge is that today traditional medicine is delivered in the exact same fashion as allopathic medicine. So you might as well consider holistic medicine
mhm,
allopathic, right? So instead of pills, you got herbs, right?
mhm,
Instead of physical therapy, you got massage. So they're still now, but they're doing things in the same exact way. And when I go in, I have to do a deep investigation into where's this really coming from. And
mhm,
usually it leads back to mom and dad.
mhm.
99.99999% of the time, or it leads back to some form of individual trauma that they experienced, that maybe someone was in a car accident and they got thrown through the windshield,
Mhm,
or some kid was their hands were put on a gas stove,
mhm,
or they got in some kind of accident or some kind of emotional trauma, right? Their mom dies when they're 6 years old,
mhm,
or their dad abandons them, he goes out for cigarettes and never comes home. And so these traumas, these stressors, these distortions, they sit in the body like a ticking time bomb, and they're only waiting for the right moment to explode, and then they're going to create a lot of intense symptomology. And so
mhm,
an example of that would be uh, massive, intense headaches, deep levels of insomnia, uh, tooth issues, vision issues, hearing issues, heart attacks, strokes, cancer. It's coming for you. For all listeners, listen, it's coming for you if you refuse to take a half step back and assess what's my true level of stress, and then take action to find someone who will help you start to resolve those things. And I hate to be the sobering pill, and then I love to be the sobering pill, because I was living in fantasy, right? Meaning I went into SEAL training, got into the SEAL teams, and the fantasy was that I could use my body in this way and there would be no cost.
mhm,
And there was a cost, right? By 29, I was losing my vision. No, by 31, I was losing my vision. By 29, I was losing my hearing. By 33, I needed a full-blown hip replacement. I was a mess. And that was because I lived in fantasy, meaning that I didn't have the information. Of course, no one else had the information either,
mhm,
because we never really looked at things that way. If you were 50 years old and you had pain in your body at that time, you said, well, this is just part of getting old.
mhm.
And now you tell a 50-year-old, like, hey, you got pain in your body. He's like, okay, I got to find someone who's going to help me resolve it. Well, in 1996, people didn't think like that,
Right.
right? Because there were the traditional forms of medicine, meaning holistic care, that was out there. They were still in like what you call the woo-woo category, until they started to get funded to be able to do research to show that, hey, this creates profound, repeatable, verifiable results. And then
Mhm,
the Western world started to open up its mind to, like, oh, there's these other ideas out there that we could utilize. And they started to lean on Eastern principles
yeah.
and Eastern philosophy and Eastern styles of medicine.
Yeah, and we were talking a little bit about, professional sports. I brought it up, but like also military, like you're constantly being pushed to go through the pain,
Yep.
see past the pain, go through it, don't
Yep.
worry about it, ignore it, kind of a thing. So you're
Yep.
also having that part of it beaten into your psyche,
Yep.
so that's got to be part of the challenge too, on
For
top of
sure.
not really knowing any better, you're also being told don't worry about it, and then it until it's like a really big thing. Kind of sounds like that's what you got to. You got to the point where, you need hip replacement, I think you just said,
Yeah.
um and a variety of other things. So how would my listeners know like it's time to seek you out or to figure this out? Or how would they assess you? You said earlier, that they need this kind of training. It sounds like everybody needs it,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be for everybody. There's no human on the planet that wouldn't benefit dramatically. But most of the people who find me happen to be entrepreneurs. Why? Because entrepreneurs are risk takers,
Hmm.
right? Entrepreneurs always want to get better at everything that they do because they have that drive in them. Okay.
Sure.
And um my reflection back to the listeners would be, if you have a symptom and every month and every year your symptom gets a little bit worse, goes a little bit deeper in your body, gets a little bit more dramatic, that's your moment. The first moment you realize that that symptom is getting worse, you need to find somebody like me who will help you start to resolve and pull out the tension and stress that's actually creating that symptom.
Hmm. That makes sense. That definitely makes some sense. So, and I also was thinking about for myself. So like I have back pain, right?
Uh-huh.
And I can't, it's even to the point where I can't even figure out exactly where it's coming from, right? Because the
Mhm.
back is like interconnected. Like,
Yep,
so, and I didn't even think about the amount of stress that I probably have put on myself that has contributed to that.
for sure.
I'm just thinking about the physical injury, right, that I had that helped start that pain. But it's an interesting, concept that I didn't even really think about, stress contributing to that. But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So,
well, look, think of it like this. There's a basic algorithm, right? And what that means is when children are born, they're going to explore their environment. And if
mhm,
they are under parental care that is spacious, the child is able to explore that environment without shock or pain. Um, and when that first bit of shock comes in that alters them, the child is going to figure out how to avoid the punishment, the rejection, humiliation, the discomfort, and the violence.
mhm,
And then that's going to become their winning strategy for life. And they're going to apply that from that moment forward all the time. And as they're applying that strategy, they're going to get to a point where they have the realization that they need help, right? They
mhm,
applied the strategy, but now that strategy isn't producing the result that they really want. And so there must be something in the way. And the thing that's in the way is the limiting belief that the child made up in order to produce that strategy in the first place. And so children from womb until 7 are strictly in a precognitive state of function. So in that state, they're making up things about reality that are false. And then as an
mhm,
adult, they're hired and required to keep those belief systems moving forward. Where every time that you participate or project the limiting belief into the atmosphere around you, what's going to happen? It's going to
mhm,
produce a result. And if it's false, what it's going to produce inside of you is pain, and just a tiny little bit. And
mhm,
then the next month, oh, a little bit more. And the next month, a little bit more. And then that's going to pile up over time. And so it's really the limiting beliefs that we made up when our minds were in an irrational state of function, in that precognitive state of development, that causes humans to then experience pain in their bodies as adults.
mhm,
So now I'm moving through the world. I am applying my winning strategy to avoid punishment, rejection, humiliation, discomfort, violence, and death. And that's causing my body to produce stress because now I have this curated image of how things are supposed to be. I have this vested interest. And in that vested interest, I'm going to continue to create more stress as long as my vested interest is false.
mhm,
And now that I'm stressed, it takes a massive amount of stress to create a little bit of tension. It takes a massive amount of tension to create a little bit of distortion. So imagine your back, right?
Mhm.
There's a level of distortion there that's going on structurally. So if we reverse engineer that, we know that there's a massive amount of tension in order to create that little bit of distortion that's generating that consistent level of excessive amounts of sensation. Let's go back one step further. In order to get that tension that you have in your body, we have to have a massive amount of individual and unresolved generational stress, which was passed down to you.
Mhm. It's very, very interesting. Like, how did you get to this point? I mean, I would assume like you did some, you went to the doctor, you couldn't find relief there, but like, what's the story? How did you get to this part of, the realization, right? That you needed to learn like traditional Chinese medical practices in order to help yourself.
Yeah, I was chumming along doing what you alluded to earlier, which was I was taking on that military mindset of like, if you don't mind, the pain doesn't matter, keep going.
Hmm.
And I tried or attempted to continue to apply the same strategy as a civilian
Right.
in the real world. Now, that strategy applies in the military, it's fine. But when you leave the military and you're assimilating back into regular culture, those strategies are very limiting strategies. And
Hmm.
so I ended up with a lot of pain in my body as an athlete because I was training for what I had a tough time, which I thought I was capable of, which was getting to Olympic trials.
Hmm.
And that didn't happen, partly because I had so much pain in my body that I had to continue to keep resting again and again and again because I was getting these tiny little injuries that were
Hmm.
always shutting me down.
Yeah.
And it's the pain that woke me up. I never woke up in the morning thinking like, oh, I want to go out and resolve this. I want to study Chinese medicine. That looks good. I want to get into learning about the body. No, I was using my body like it was a skateboard, like it was transportation to get me from one place to the next. And I had no idea that we were given the Starship Enterprise, and yet I was using it like it was a skateboard.
Hmm. No, it's a good point. I'm by no means an Olympic athlete or even close to even trying to go to Olympic trials ever in my life, but I did like to jog and run, right? And I twisted my ankle and I kept prematurely trying to come back to that. It would heal and I'd be feeling okay, and then I would try to run again and hurt it again.
Yeah.
I did not listen to my body telling me that there's something else going on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so how can I be better at that? How can one, identify ways to start listening a little bit better
Yeah.
to the environment
Yeah,
around them?
this is easy. First, you have to have some basic education, right? Like every joint in your body is associated with a different organ system, and the ankles are associated with the liver and the gallbladder.
Mhm.
And when you look at where the channels of energy run through to get to the ankle, the liver and the gallbladder, you realize it goes through the middle of the abductors and the middle of the adductors. So if my abductors and adductors are out of balance, meaning the left inside of my leg is short and tight, and the outside of my opposite leg is short and tight, that's going to create a twist in my pelvis. And
Mhm.
then when I go and run, it's going to make it very easy for me to roll my ankle. And so the ankle rolling is only a symptom. You
Mhm.
have to backtrack and go up the body and realize is anyone can get out they can get on the internet and look for a meridian map on traditional Chinese medicine and look where they continue to feel pain and
Mhm.
look where they continue to have injury and twists and turns. And they can go, oh, I get it. So this goes right through the center of this muscle. Okay, well, let me do this. Let me take out tension out of that muscle and let's see what happens. And guess
Mhm.
what happens? You stop rolling your ankle
Yeah, that
because,
I would never have thought to even go through and think of those things, how those are connected.
yeah,
That's very interesting. Um, I definitely need more more knowledge in those areas to kind of figure that out, especially if to me that feels like it would almost be like completely left field, right?
Yeah, like it's outside of the box thinking, but if you think about it, it's very simplistic, right?
Hmm.
For instance, you have a joint, and that joint has a direct line of where muscles are directing energy towards. Okay.
Hmm.
A lot of times you see less on men and much more on women, you see bunions, right?
Hmm.
And you look at the left big toe, and her big toe is pushed all the way to the outside now. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, what's that telling you? It's telling you that there's too much weight coming down on that big toe.
Hmm.
And so what they're going to do is they're going to go in and they're going to meet with a foot doctor, and he's going to do a little bit of shading and maybe an operation and pull everything back and put some pins and needles in there and
Hmm.
crank everything around. But guess what? They never solved the problem. They're only dealing with the symptom. But
Hmm.
if you followed that energy from her big toe up her body, where the meridian goes, the energetic channel, you followed up, you'd see that that goes right through the middle of the medial hamstring.
Hmm.
And if all you did was take tension out of the medial hamstring, it would stop the intense, dramatic twist of the big toe moving inside the foot.
Hmm.
I mean, moving towards the outside of the foot versus the inside.
Yeah.
It's very simple,
Yeah.
right? Because the thing about the body is that the body always tells the truth.
Hmm.
And if you have a little bit of education and you know what you're listening to, and you have the tools and the right mindset, you can solve most of those issues in the privacy of your own home in 10 or 15 minutes.
Hmm. Yeah, the way you explain it that way, it makes a lot of sense. Like, when you think about it, they are just treating like the symptoms, but not all the time getting at the root of the issue.
Yeah,
But there's other things that are connected, and that's a really good explanation of um, what you're trying to do here to kind of solve the problem at its root rather than, you
that's
know,
right.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me now. So I appreciate that explanation. Um, So when people want to get in touch with you, when people want to connect and kind of learn more, how do they go about that?
I think the best way for them to get an education is, look, you go to Amazon or you go to my website, truebodyintelligence.com, and you order my book called Free for Life. And I give
Hmm.
you a very profound education in there. So then at least you have the information. And why I
Hmm.
say that is without the information, it's impossible to take heartfelt action to your own benefit because you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And then go to the website, peruse around, see what's interesting for you, and then get in contact with me, right? At support
Hmm.
at truebodyintelligence.com. And somebody will respond to your email and we'll get you some information for free
Hmm.
that will get you started on the road to at least some basic understanding and teaching you a few things where you can take action to your own benefit.
Hmm. That makes awesome sense, and that I recommend listeners do that. I will definitely put all that information in the show notes as well, so they know where to go and get your book. And how did speaking of your book, like how did that come about? What led you to kind of put it all down in paper?
I had, before there was the movie The Bucket List, I
Hmm.
started creating my bucket list when I was 17 of
Hmm.
the things that I knew that I wanted to do and that I felt like intuitively were going to be part of my life process. And writing a book was one of them.
Hmm.
And so
And
there came the moment, and it's kind of like other people have a plan. I just have a bunch of goals that I have thrown up on the wall.
hmm.
And then there's a moment where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to focus on that one now.
Yeah.
And, it I woke up in the morning, it was like, okay, it's time. And I put the time, the energy and effort in, and I got some good support and
Hmm.
produced something that every single person that talked to me that has read the book goes, it's the easiest read. And I
Hmm.
resonated with every single thing. And I'm on the phone with you because I trust you.
Hmm.
I said, cool.
Well, I think it's terrific that you decided to, write a book that also is helping others, right? So that I don't know if
Yeah.
that was in the plan, in the goal, but like I think that that's also a great way to kind of, stay connected and, help others. I think that that's super important. So what else is on that? What's next on that big bucket list?
What's next on the big bucket list is the release of my album,
Okay.
you know, and it'll go into its mastering stage within like the next 2 months, and that'll be mastered, and I'll release that into the world.
Oh, awesome.
So
So
it's a
can you,
really profound, like a a mix of a lot of different genres.
mhm.
I'm a piano player and a guitar player, a electric and acoustic, and I'm a songwriter. So I wrote some songs and decided. I woke up one day, it was like, oh, it's time to go to the studio, and I got together with a good producer and a amazing studio engineer and started to piece together something that I think is really profound and impactful.
Very cool. So you're a man of many talents. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm creative by nature. So like my mind is always looking around for the next thing that's looking for attention and affection and nurturing. And once I have my mind on something, I execute and I
Mhm.
move things to completion. So I might start talking about something 20 years earlier, but there is going to come a point where I actually take that action and make that thing happen.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have the mindset of an entrepreneur. You mentioned it earlier that you work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I know you've done some entrepreneuring and you're kind of
Yeah,
doing it now. So,
yeah.
that's a great way to, to kind of approach the world is to really think about all the possibilities and I love the goals that are just kind of up there and you're going to do them. There's going to be a point and you're going to decide this is the time.
This is the
Um,
moment.
yeah,
Yeah,
this is the moment. And one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is bringing that, getting to the actual goal and completing it. Sometimes they
that's the
lose,
key.
yeah, they lose the interest, or they did it and now they want to do something else. So, do you have any advice for other people that are
Yeah,
similar mindset in that regard?
yeah. I went to boarding school in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I befriended a really amazing human named Gordon Reed, which we
Mhm.
nicknamed Munchie. And he said to me one day, I'd gone back to see him after I got out of the SEAL teams. I was in Hershey back to hang out with some old classmates. And he said this thing to me, it's always stuck with me. He goes, Maher, I'm a hell of a starter. I'm a lousy finisher. Always finish what you start.
Mhm.
And that has stayed in my mind. So um the thing about completion is you never know what's in store for you in terms of life.
Mhm.
And once you get something started, chip away at it, right? If some people want to be a doctor, if you're going to get a PhD, sometimes it takes you 25 years.
Mhm.
Some people it takes them 7, right? There's no rush, right? Life is long. Continue to use these as opportunities to learn.
Mhm.
And when there's a little bit of space, move the needle forward a little bit and then move the needle forward a little bit. I watched this thing on YouTube this morning. I woke up really early, and this guy was breaking it down to the people that are really successful in the world at what they do. They spend 100 hours at getting better every year. What that comes down to is 18 minutes a day.
Mhm.
18 minutes a day of focus, and you're going to move whatever it is to completion. But if you feel like you've got a fixed sense of time, then what happens is the guilt and the shame of not getting things done and this idealistic view of how reality should work in terms of timing, that's what keeps people from completing on things. And I'd say, look, open it up and realize that there's a divine sense of time and that the things that you complete may take longer than you imagined, and make that assumption from the very beginning. It's sort of like whenever someone's going to build a house and the contractor's telling, well, it's going to take us $670,000 to build a house. People always give them advice. It's always going to take a third more,
Mhm.
right? And,
Yeah.
and so when it comes to completing things and you have big goals and big dreams, it may take a lot longer. Think about how many actors that we see that are like B level actors, And it takes them, what, 30 years to get nominated for some award. You keep moving forward a little bit every day, and that's it. And be happy with what you produce that day, because when you do things from happiness and joy, you have more inspiration the next day. But when you're doing things from obligation and shame and guilt, you actually reduce your energy. And so go at a pace that's good for you. Write them, keep them on your refrigerator, look at them a little bit every day, and then do an honest self-assessment. Am I avoiding being extraordinary? And why am I doing that? And if you can be honest with yourself and realize the reason why you're avoiding this thing is because you're avoiding being extraordinary, and that, guess what, no one in your family ever got a college education. It's a big deal to complete and get a college education. Like, if it takes you 15 years, who cares?
Right.
You're going to be the first. Like, realize and have realistic expectations. Know where you come from, take a little step every day, and be happy with what's in front of you, because inspiration is really the key.
Well, that's great advice for sure, Christopher. I love it. I'm going to ask, like, one of the stumper questions that I usually ask about. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to ask a couple other little quick things to maybe get to know you a little bit better. Some other kind of those fun questions, like, if you could have dinner with three people, alive or dead, who would they be and why?
Jalen Hurts is at the top of my list. He is my favorite athlete. I love his attitude. I love his commitment to work. I love his style of leadership. I love his grit. So I would love to just sit with him and hang out and be in his vibe. Another person would be Jesus. I would love to sit down with him and, just catch up, hang out,
Awesome.
get some advice.
Right.
And then I think probably Ray Charles.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah.
I think the reason for me of why Ray Charles is because what he was able to accomplish as a blind musician, and what it must have been like, just his whole story of journeying through the South, right?
Yeah.
Playing in these backstreet bars, and the racism, and how he woke up every day, and everything that he worked through, his challenges with addiction and relationships. And I just think he would be such a rich person to sit next to and have a conversation with. I just think by sitting with him, you would become more intelligent.
Yeah. I'd like to hear that story. That's awesome. Just knowing the challenges that, you know, what I would say, like, an everyday kind of musician would have to go through to be successful, then throw on some of these other challenges that he
Yeah,
had to go
like
through, right?
being
Yeah.
blind and being extraordinary, being black at the time.
Right.
And then, like, whoa, his journey for me is just, phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then if you could be, this is kind of a similar question, but if you could be at any point in history just to kind of witness an event in history, what would that be? Some of these are more stumpers than the stumper question.
Um, I would like to be at the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City, when um when they raised their hand with the black glove.
Mhm.
I would love to be sitting in that crowd and be in that moment and feel the energy of what all that represented, because that took an intense amount of courage, right? With everything that was going on. Medgar Evers was assassinated. Malcolm X was recently assassinated. Bobby Kennedy was
Yeah.
just recently killed, right? June 5th.
Yeah.
And and Martin Luther King and those guys were still able to go to the Summer Olympics and raise their fist and go, hey, look, we want you to understand we're more than athletes, and we want you to pay attention to something that's going on in the world and just witness the bravery of that moment.
Yeah, that would be really awesome to witness.
That would be, because, you know, there's certain things you see, you get chills. I just think the chills of seeing that, because I'm someone who's loved track and field, right? Competition, sport, running, speed, all of that. And to be in that moment would be profound.
Yeah. No, I can't agree more. That those are all awesome people to kind of meet with, and that's an awesome time in history too. So circling back to that original question, is there anything else you want to share with our audience that we haven't talked about today?
Yeah, you know, look, life is short, okay? And you got to take care of yourself, right? And what you get out of life, what you put into life is what you're going to get out of it, is what they teach you. The same is also true for your body. What you put into your body is what you'll get out of it. And to really start to build a powerful relationship with your body, realize that it needs cleaning on a semi-regular basis, which means some fasting, that it needs, you know, a decent amount of sleep. It needs a nap here and there, right? It needs to see things that are beautiful, right? It wants to take some risk. It wants to move, like really start to build that positive relationship and feed it good food. And what that means to me is make the best of a bad decision. So if you're at a restaurant and the food on the menu isn't great, pick the best, healthiest item on the menu and be satisfied with it. Don't get fixated on everything needs to be perfect. Pray over your food, and love people. Like, one of the things that I love about myself is I'm always in awe of other humans. Like, I could cry in 0.2 seconds if I'm moved by someone's performance or someone's generosity, right? I love to be moved emotionally. And every time that you give value and appreciation and recognition to these people that are constantly, everyone everywhere, doing these extraordinary things, your life gets better. See the beauty, witness the difficulty, but put more of your focus on what's beautiful and amazing. And we as a global family will experience more of what's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that sounds terrific, Christopher. I totally agree with you. And we need to be open to those things a little bit more. We need to allow those things to come in and to allow ourselves to be moved. And so I urge my listeners to connect with Christopher and True Body Intelligence. I really want to thank you for being on the show today, and for sharing. And I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Oh, thank you, man. It's great to be in your presence. You're a great host, right? The fluidity, the spaciousness that you have, the intuitiveness, intuitive nature of your questions. You're a very good guide. Okay, I've done a lot of podcasts. I've been on a lot of people's shows, and you're up at the top.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.